I've just had such a great day. It began with a motorcycle ride down some pretty little back roads to come and meet a lady who lives in a converted water tower. She converted the water tower herself because today she is a multi-award-winning architect. Now, back in the day when she did this, it was the 1980s, and she had just come back from a solo round the world trip on a motorcycle and became the first British woman ever to ride a motorcycle around the world solo. She's a whole bundle of fun and a total inspiration. She's someone who has stepped so far out of her comfort zone, who has faced fear and emotions, but knowing what it was she wanted to achieve, she stepped through those things because they were the cost. Those are the things that we have to pay the money in order to achieve the things that we want to achieve. And I think most of us would agree that would be a fulfilled and happy life. We cannot achieve fulfillment if we do not stretch our boundaries, if we do not try hard, and Elspeth has done that. She has written an amazing book called Lone Rider. There is a link in the description below. Please go and check it out, read it, listen to her speak, and I think you will be compelled to check it out. She's also brought out a second book called Lone Rider, The Photographs, because I also wanted to talk to her about how do you budget which photos you're going to take, because when Elspeth and I were young, there was no digital. Every single click cost an amount of money, and when you only have so many clicks to cover a continent, how do you choose what to photograph? Please come and join me. Come meet Elspeth. I would like to begin by asking the question, who is Elspeth Beard?
I have no idea. Who am I? Well, I'm an architect. I'm a motorcyclist. I suppose I'm a bit of an adventurer. That's about it, really.
Oh, you are so modest.
Thank you. No, I don't know. I'm just me.
I get it. It's a really fundamental question, isn't it?
But, you know, I am what I am, and, you know, I'm just me.
Would you call yourself an extrovert or a...
Introvert.
That's the word.
Introvert, definitely. I've always kind of done things in life quietly. You know, I was always hiding in the corner and pretending I wasn't there, and I don't like crowds, I don't like parties, I don't like being the centre of attention. I very much like to do my own thing in a kind of quiet way in the background. And
yet, you have done some pretty extraordinary things which many human beings haven't, such as renovating an old water tower and turning it into this. So there's a huge creative streak within you.
There is, but when I did this water tower, literally, I bought the tower in 1988, and it was a real labour of love. I mean, I spent 7 years doing all the work on it, and I did a lot of the work myself. I don't know, just got down and I just did it, and I designed it, and got the planning and listed building consents, and then the next 6 or 7 years doing the building work. And I can remember actually the very first architectural awards. It was a local conservation officer down at the council, and he just sent me the form and said, why don't you put in for this? And it was just a local award. So anyway, so I just got you know, one of those Polaroid cameras that just spits out the photo, and I just went click, 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 one in each room. Didn't even really spend any time doing it at all. I thought I'd never even hear from them again. Anyway, so the judging team turned up on my doorstep, and I remember they walked into the first floor with the mezzanine bathrooms hanging, and they looked and they went, oh my goodness, like that. And I looked at them and I went, is it good or is it bad? I didn't, you know, I was so sort of in my own world building it. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't know whether they thought they were saying, oh my goodness, this is just dreadful. Anyway, I won the award, so that was obviously, they thought it was pretty good. But it's that, you know, so I kind of do things quite quietly.
The start of your journey at Heathrow, you were going to go to the States to catch up with your motorcycle that had already been shipped. You were terrified.
It was just this big leap into the unknown, the complete unknown. It was scary. I was 23. I mean, when I think back now, I mean, obviously at the time, you always think you know everything. Whatever age you are, you always think you know everything. And I think up until that time, I'd been busy doing everything, and I hadn't really had time to stop and think about it. And suddenly, at the airport, it was kind of, this is it, you know, there's no turning back now. I can remember when I first started talking about doing my trip to my friends and family, and of course my family did everything they could to try and stop me, but my friends, I thought they kind of humoured me for a bit, and then they realised I was actually quite serious about doing it. But then almost it reached a stage where, because I talked about doing it, I couldn't really not do it, and I couldn't lose faith and back out and not do it. And so, I mean, obviously there was a whole part of me that wanted to do it, but there was another part of me that was pretty scared.
And you reach a point of accountability, don't you?
Yeah.
When you've said you're going to do it, and you say you're going to do it, and you say you're going to do it.
And then you can't.
Suddenly, you can't back out.
You can't back out.
You backed yourself into a corner.
Yeah, and it was a bit like that. Well, as I say, I mean, although there was a whole other side of me that really wanted to do it, I was very scared and apprehensive. And, you know, like, what the hell am I doing?
Someone once said to me, and I can't remember who it was, that the best journeys in life always begin in scary land.
Oh, absolutely.
When I was 29, I had a nice, comfy life, and everything I ever wanted, and I was unhappy. I thought, well, I'm going to have to stop. And I sold everything that wouldn't fit into a rucksack and bought a ticket to the other side of the world to see what would happen. I was crapping myself. I don't know about you. I at one point gave myself a target and just said, okay, you're going to here, and if you don't like it and you really hate it, you can go home. But you're bloody well going to here.
I mean,
Did you do that?
Well, sort of. I mean, one of the reasons I chose to start the journey in America was that, I mean, apart from a financial one, because I only had a very, limited funds, it was also, America was a long way away, and it was a big journey to get there. It was a big journey to get my bike there, and it was a big journey to get myself there. So it was much harder to turn around and come back. And I sort of knew that I'd done it the year before, so it was a known quantity. So I kind of had the comfort of that it was that it was something I'd done before. And by the time I'd gone to Australia and New Zealand, I was on the other side of the world then, and most of it had just been covering two huge oceans. All I'd done actually is ride across one country, and then of course by the time I was in Australia, I thought, well, I might as well just carry on going back the other way, because I wasn't going to turn around and go back the same way I came. So, but I think if I'd sort of headed east and sort of headed off to Turkey and Iran and Pakistan sort of straight off, I'm not sure I don't know, maybe I would have done it, but I think that would have been far more daunting for me.
You say it was easy doing the thing across the States. There were still lots of psychological hurdles that you needed to overcome, barriers in the way, things that may or may not have made you think, oh, for goodness sake, is it going to be like this for the rest of the trip?
Well, it was quite interesting, because I did change my whole attitude to my trip. So when I started off, I'd like to try and plan days ahead, and I was going to be here, and then I was going to go there, and then the next day I'd be to here, and I'd do this. And gradually, as I kind of really eased into the trip, certainly when I started traveling in Southeast Asia and India, and I mean, there you just couldn't plan. There was just no point in planning, because anything you planned just never worked out. And it reached the stage in India where I would just plan to get to the end of the road as far as I could see it, and then I'd go around the corner, and then I planned to get to the end of that road. So it had come down from planning 3 or 4 days or a week in advance, trying to kind of, I'll be here and I'll be there and I'll be there, to planning half an hour ahead.
We're all afraid of the unknown, which is crazy because we don't know what it is yet. If you're driving down the road at night, you can see about 200 yards in your headlights. But we keep going. We trust that the next 200 yards will be there.
Exactly. That's a very good, exactly.
But I think there is a block in so many of us that we try to flatline life a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think it gives us comfort that we know we're going to be here and then here and then here and then here. And then you've worked out there's a petrol station there and there's this, I mean, as best you could. Obviously, in those days, it was very different to what it is now. But
if you wanted a petrol station then, you asked a bunch of people, and half the people pointed that way and half pointed the other way. You couldn't go onto Google Maps and go, petrol station near me.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when I mean, like in America, obviously it wasn't a problem. There were gas stations everywhere. But certainly in Australia, whenever I filled up, I would always ask the people in that petrol station where the next one was and where the next one was. So I would have an idea. Because some of the petrol stations in the outback in Australia then, there were like 400 or 500 miles between petrol stations, and my bike would only do 330 per tank before I went on to reserve. So I had to be quite careful. So it was just constantly asking people.
And they create interruptions to the journey. And I think it's Ted Simon who said it took him about a year to realise.
The interruptions are the journey. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think, it's like you must have had experiences like that with building your water tower. Well, not building the tower, but converting the tower. Yeah. Some of the things I guess you probably remember most are when they began with you thinking, oh, for goodness, I can't believe they did, whatever.
I know.
But then it's the story you tell again and again and again.
Exactly. I mean, I think of all the things that happened on my trip, the things I talk about, there'll be my accidents, there'll be when I hit the dog in Thailand and stayed with the Thai family for a week. It's these experiences that you end up having. It's like when my bike caught fire in Australia in the outback, and I ended up with this Welsh guy called John, and we just kind of made a wiring loom in this kind of shed in the outback for 5 days. I mean, it was just this kind of very bizarre. And all his mates came round one evening, and we went out kind of chasing kangaroos at night time on a big pickup truck, And I mean, where did that come from? But it's these ventures and these things, as you say, those are the journey.
Being open to miracles and magic along the way.
Yeah. When I was in northern Thailand, and I had this charging problem with my bike. So basically the generator light stayed on, the red light. So I stopped the bike, and I always used to get my hand manual out and sit on the side of the road and pretend as if I knew what I was looking at, as if I was going to solve the problem. Literally, I was there for 5 minutes, and this Thai guy came along, quite an old guy. And again, he didn't speak a word of English. I didn't speak any Thai, and he looked at me, kind of going like this, what's the problem? I started the bike. I pointed at the red light. I did the throttle, and the red light stayed on, and I made the sign as if it's supposed to go off. And he looked at me, yeah. And then he beckoned, he said, come. And so I followed him on my bike as he was walking. And we went round the corner, and down the road, round the corner. We went to this huge kind of building. And it turned out that he owned one of the largest alternator factories in northern Thailand. I mean, where's that? It was ridiculous. It was amazing.
So many people, I think, live in a world of fear. But miracle and magic doesn't happen until you go into the scary zones.
And you have to be open to it. I mean, This old guy could have come along and he could have gone like this, and I go, oh, leave me alone, you're bothering me. I mean, he looked like an old guy who was quite lonely on his own, so I thought maybe he just wanted to chat, and so I was being nice, and so I thought, so it just shows, and that's what I mean about karma and approaching life in the right way, and being positive about things, and not always assuming that people are out to be nasty or horrible or steal from you or whatever.
If you give people the opportunity to be great, they usually are great.
Exactly.
And of course, there's times that we get that wrong, but
it still shouldn't stop you from trying.
Yeah.
And it still shouldn't stop you just because you have one bad experience. You have to think of the 100 good experiences that you had. And I've always done that all my life. I always give people the benefit of the doubt.
There's a friend of mine who is probably the least dipsy woo-woo person on the planet, and he has always said, if you think it will happen, it will happen.
Yeah.
So be careful what you think.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And I think especially now, you know, there's a lot of stuff and misinformation out there, and as you say, there's this real thing of fear, and it's such a dangerous place to get into when we're all frightened of each other. See the world, experience it, meet people, different cultures, different languages, different countries. You've got to see it for yourself. Don't believe what you read or see or whatever.
Absolutely, that's where confidence grows.
Yeah.
And in solving the problems, that's where we get a sense of fulfilment in our life.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you don't get it from anywhere else.
Yeah,
It's only us who can give ourselves a happy, fulfilled life.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry to interrupt the conversation, guys. If you don't know me already, my name is Mike Browne. I'm a photographer, and I've had some amazing adventures all over this beautiful, wonderful world in which we live. But I have had to struggle to get there. There's been mountains to climb and confidence to build. If you have mountains of your own, would like to build your own confidence, then please sign up to my newsletter, where you'll find inspiring stories, interesting articles, and of course, photography tips. It's all free. There is a link in the top right of the screen right now. I would also ask you to check out my in-person and online photography training, where I can help you become the photographer that you've always wanted to be and take pictures that you are proud of. There are links to both and more in the description with this video. Let's get back to the conversation. There's a lot of scary moments in your book, and I can't help but wonder how many scary moments are not in the book. Because, you know, let's face it, how do you take all that experience, shake it out onto the carpet like a jigsaw puzzle, and then think which bits are going in the book and which bits aren't? You were approached sexually by, you know, one by someone you knew quite well, who suddenly appeared late at night. And then, you know, I think it was in India, by someone at a guest house who just obviously expected it to be part of the payment. Now, in the book, you seem really, really calm about both instances. When there must be fear in those situations.
I did manage to stay very calm, actually, in those situations. And I think it was a risk that I had accepted it was going to happen, and I still wanted to do the trip. For me, it was very important that I didn't let those instances sort of eat away at me and make me angry and bitter. I thought that was very important, that it was, you know, that I just saw them as, you know, things that happened. It wasn't the majority of the people. It was just a small, you know, minority. Otherwise, I think it's quite easy to, as I say, to kind of really think about all those things, churn them over in your head, and it just makes you angry and bitter, and it's just not a good thing. So I just let go of it, and just carried on. And I think, and I don't know where I kind of got the strength or mental whatever to do that, but I don't know, I just kind of did. It was my way of dealing with it, was to very much sort of move on.
I just know from some of my own travels, there were times when I certainly know my life was in danger. And weirdly, what you just said, when you were approached by these men, you were very calm. I was at gunpoint with some drunken policemen somewhere. And the ridiculous thing is in my mind was, don't be a dickhead, you're not going to shoot me. Now, when the thing was over, I thought, well, why wouldn't they have shot me? And that was when the heart rate and the adrenaline and all the rest of it kicked in. I don't know, did you have similar things with that? Because I don't know, I'm just imagining, I'm putting words in your mouth, I guess, but I would just imagine that to be so scary, to have someone bang on your door late at night and just open it, and there's this person stood there naked, obviously sort of like, shall we?
Yeah, but I guess...
It's almost like you put a note on the table going, come to my room, big boy, you know?
Well, I don't know. I just deal with it in a very, very calm way, because the instance that you're talking about, I mean, I did actually, you know, I'd been working in his, or at the same practice as for 5 months or something. And actually we'd become good friends. And I think I just sort of, I don't know, I just dealt with it in a very sort of I don't think it's a good idea, really, or something. I mean, his wife was down the, you know, the corridor, for goodness sake. And I just kind of, and we left, you know. And
maybe she wanted to join in. Maybe she was disappointed.
I don't know. And I think I just said, I really don't think that's a good idea. And, you know, but I was very nice about it and very calm. And then he just kind of left. I think I was probably far more scared of being hit while I was riding the bike, which is completely out of my control, ending up on the side of the road in a ditch, and just lying there and dying. To me, that was far, far greater risk because it was out of my control.
You need to buy Elspeth's book, and then you will understand what we're talking about, and I will tell you about that later. But what I think many people don't get are the incredible number of hours that are spent alone. And let's face it, who's there with you all the time, every second of our lives? We are. So
I got so lonely. I mean, I really did.
You said about loneliness.
I got really, really lonely. Like, I felt lonely just generally day to day on the bike, on my own, talking to myself, singing to myself, talking to my bike, getting into my tent at the end of the day, you know, on my own. And of course, I didn't have the phone then to play with and amuse myself with, you know, whatever. So, you know, so there was that sort of loneliness. You know, my family thought what I was doing was very odd and very strange, and my friends thought what I was doing was very odd, and they couldn't relate to that. So I wasn't really part of that crowd anymore. Being on a bike, I just didn't fit in anywhere at all.
There is a cost to everything, and it's like, we've been talking about some fear-based things and some challenges and all the rest of it, but of course there were other things that were super exciting and rewarding and fulfilling and amazing. Those things are the cost, the coin that we have to be prepared to pay to get the other stuff on the other side of the fence.
Yes, and I think it's also really important that you know, because people sort of think, oh, it's just, you just had a holiday and you were so lucky to do it. And I'm kind of going, well, actually, no. If you want to, anything that you do in life that is different or unusual or whatever, you have to be prepared to make sacrifices. You know, I never used to spend my money buying clothes. I never went on holidays. I never, you know, I did everything on a shoestring. I worked in a, I mean, you know, it's just living your life in a particular way in order to achieve what you want to do. And you have to be prepared to make sacrifices. And this is what some people don't understand. No. They think they can have everything and do all this and do that. And you can't. You have to make sacrifices.
Yeah. And we've had a whole generation growing up being told you can have anything you want in life, my little darling.
That's the problem.
And that's kind of true. But the missing sentence is you can have pretty much anything you want in life, but you're going to have to pay for it, either with hard work or with sacrificing a relationship or with whatever it may be. Okay, so there's lots of trials and tribulations along the way and hurdles to overcome and problems to solve, but it wasn't all like that.
No.
I mean, you fell in love.
I did.
Look at your face. See, I've heard you speak on stage so many times, and you have that same look each time.
Yeah. Well, considering I left broken-hearted.
Yeah.
And lost, and I came back, you know, in love and, you know, feeling I'd found my soulmate. So yeah, highs and lows, but a lot of highs.
Tell us about some other highs. If you're going to go like that, you're going to cherry pick a high, a moment, maybe especially one that's not in the book.
I think of parts of the world that I travelled in, like northern Thailand was a high. I can't think of a particular, it was everything about northern Thailand. You know, I loved the roads, I loved the people, I loved the scenery, I loved the temples, I loved the ruins, you know, just every aspect, the food, there was every aspect of it. So I can't say there was one, this moment was amazing. It was just a combination of all of those things, just made my 2 or 3 weeks, or however long I was in northern Thailand, very memorable. I think another memorable time was actually when I finished the Annapurna circuit. So when I was in Kathmandu, after I'd met my parents and they'd gone, I was there with a friend, and we decided to try and do the Annapurna trek, which was a 3.5 week trek, sort of right over the Annapurnas, and I'm not a walker. I mean, I was a motorcyclist. I don't walk, and literally...
You had to have been a pretty fit motorcyclist, though, because there are muscles you use in riding a motorcycle, particularly when you don't have a fully fed motorcycle.
Yeah.
You're riding hours on end. There are muscles that you use, the motorcycle muscles.
But,
Anyway,
they're probably not the same muscles as...
Oh, no, they're not walking muscles.
Climbing up to 5,500 meters in the Himalayas with a pack on your back. So, and I was slightly dragged on to doing this trek, because I thought, I don't walk, I don't want to do a trek. But then I thought, well, I'm here, you know, I might as well do it. You know, I might, you know, it might be the only opportunity I get. So I was sort of almost dragged on to doing this, and it was tough. I mean, it was really tough. And everybody said, oh, you've got to go with a guide, and you won't know where you're going, and blah, blah. And in those days, the Annapurna circuit, very few people did the whole circuit. There was a sort of bit from Johnson up to Pokhara, or Pokhara to Johnson and back or something, but very few people did the whole circuit. And the first half of the circuit was very sketchy.
How long is it again?
3.5 weeks.
3.5 weeks to walk
every day.
Distance of...
So, now you're asking me. We probably did 20, 30 miles a day, which actually climbing up to altitude with a pack that was so full of stuff, it was like a sort of ball that bounced on my back. It just had 2 little straps, and it was this huge, tight ball. It was so crammed full of stuff. And it was so uncomfortable. Anyway, we sort of trudged up this, and for literally the first week and a half, we just climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed. And we got to the Thorongla Pass, and we were up, so altitude sickness, and that was probably one of the toughest things I did, actually. And I remember getting back to Kathmandu, and I felt like Superwoman, because I had been at this high altitude, and I'd done all this sort of exercising, and, you know, I had all these extra red blood corpuscles, and so I felt, I don't think I've ever felt as fit as I did then. I felt so strong, and I did this amazing sense of achievement as well, doing something that was completely different to what I would imagine I'd be doing. You know, I was riding, my bike around the world, and to go off and do this pretty tough trek with very basic equipment. So that was pretty cool, and I felt really good after that. And I did feel, actually, I've done something. You know, I felt a real sense of achievement that I'd done something that I never imagined I would do. So that was a good time. Obviously, when I was in Leh and Ladakh, and with Robert, and that's where we sort of fell in love, and that was amazing, and just had a fantastic time up there. It really was. It was like, I mean, not the highlight of the trip, but a highlight of my life, really.
Everything that you've done, I guess, has built a degree of mental fitness and resilience. Somebody once said, everything we have ever done in our entire lives has led to this moment right now. It's been a complete honour and a privilege to talk to you. It really has.
Thank you.
And I look forward to next time. Elspeth Beard, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.